Hey VC and everybody else, how you doing out there? Welcome to episode number 3 of Flashback 70s. Yes, that's where I showcase bands you have heard from the 70s, some you've probably never heard in the 70s and are kind of curious. Well, what I do is show you some of these bands, play some of their music to kind of give you a small dose of what some of these bands sound like. And you know, it could be bluesy hard rock, it could be hard rock, it could be early metal, it could be early doom, it could be psychedelic, and you know, it's all over the place. So again, episode 3. So if you're new to my channel, just hit the subscribe button, hit the bell, and you'll get updates of all my videos, whether it's Flashback 70s or my other shows I do. And leave a comment below and hit the like button. Spread the word. So anyway, first up is a band out of Germany. Progressive hard rock, progressive rock, kraut rock, you know, back in them early days, bands like this, you know, rarely, in my opinion, got heard enough. You know, again, we don't live in this day and age. You've got access to just about everything and anything you want to hear, find, or whatever, if you can find it. Back in those days, you're limited. You know, you had radio, you had word of mouth, you had friends, you had record stores, depending on where you lived in the country or the world. You know, a lot of this stuff wasn't accessible in the States, and you know, only in limited pressings, probably back in early days. And this is one of these bands, a band out of Germany called Birth Control. And the Operation album, I mean, this cover it's just crazy. Look at that. I mean, what is that, a grasshopper eating some kids? Just kind of a gory one, but I mean, fantastic keyboard influence, krautrock. These guys kind of first formed, what was it, back in '66 in Berlin. You know, I mean, these guys have been around. And this album came out, let's see, what was it? This one came out in '79, actually. Actually 71, excuse me. Came out in '71. This is very, like I said, very keys heavy. You know, if you like heavy keys or Hammond organs, some killer guitar, check these guys out. Birth Control, I mean, these guys are just fantastic. I mean, let's hear a little bit more here. I'll turn it up for you guys a little bit. Kind of have that Deep Purple vibe as well, you know, in areas. Just a killer album. I mean, God, just a gem. All right, guys. So there you go with Birth Control and Operation. Up number 2 is a band. This is kind of a cult underground collectible here, and fantastic album. These guys were, I believe these guys were out of Cleveland, Ohio. I mean, you can find originals of these if you can. They could probably draw a healthy price. Like a lot of these bands I show you, a lot of these, you know, a lot of the originals are are pricey and hard to find. A lot of these have been re-released, which is great. But here's another band called Granicus. This one I believe came out in '74, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see here. Yeah, '73, excuse me. But great hard rock, killer vocals. A band that probably should have been bigger, but just really didn't get all that much of an exposure, in my opinion. In a classic Granicus cover. They do have 3 albums out. A lot of the stuff is later, 2010 and 2016, but these guys are fantastic. If you're into early 70s hard rock. Fantastic. Vocals, killer. You know, kind of a unique vocal sound. You know how a lot of those early vocalists, like from get brain fart here. More of the glammy style, kind of a little bit in there, but definitely young vocals, but killer stuff. Anyway, so that is Granicus with their self-titled album from 1973. Great album. Check them out, guys. Up next is music from this German gal, and she's still out there putting out music today. Of course, also a German. It wasn't until like '69 she really started to take off here, and then she was in like Godspell and Jesus Christ Superstar, and she did some appearances with Amon Dull too. Appeared on television program Disco. You know, she plays blues, she sings blues. She's in heavy metal. Her current heavy band is called Velvet Viper, but I'm talking about Jutta Weinhold out of Germany. While this is not a real hard rockin' album, it's more of a bluesy, tingy rock style. As you can hear on here, this maybe has a poppy feel to it, but I mean, this girl has got some pipes on her. You know, so, but Jutta Weinhold, yeah. Definitely she was in Zed Yago. If you don't have any Zed Yago bands out of the 80s, 85 actually. Let's see here. Yeah, Velvet Viper from 1990 to the present. I do have a couple of the Velvet Vipers. I think I have one Zed Yago, but she's got kind of, vocally she has kind of that Suzi Quatro vocalist style at times. If you like Suzi Quatro. I love Suzi Quatro. But anyway, Jutta Weinhold. Very, very killer stuff. Check it out. Up next, a one album and done band, and very, very limited information on this band. That they are out of Chicago, and they only did one album. Very a lot of keys involved in this music, kind of Deep Purple-esque at times. 3-piece, 4-piece actually, but some really good hard rockers on here, some kind of maybe a little bluesier stuff at times, but If there is a negative about this album, there's no information on it. It's hard to read, but the album music is killer. Talking about Midnight and Into the Night, out of Chicago. No liner notes, nothing. You can't even read the inner label on the vinyl. It's so dark. Hard to read, very hard. This definitely needs to be done with a proper release. I mean, with liner notes and all, but as far as I know, the only one they ever done in '77 is actually when that came out, from teen hard rockers. I mean, from the Chicago area, formed out, you know, the band Midnight, was Dave Hill, Frank Anastos, Scott Marquardt, and John Falstrom. All met at a kind of a music store and kind of formed a bond, and they were inspired, of course, by bands like Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, Aerosmith, Deep Purple, so, you know, kind of the gist of where their sound kind of focuses on. They worked on material. They played gigs at colleges, wherever they could, you know, like a lot of bands back in the 70s, just to get a name out there. They recorded their own album, and just some great gritty guitar, not real gritty, but I mean just killer guitar work on this. Yeah, one album and done. This album, actually, an original of this, actually it was a 2012 copy, went for $200 of this Midnight album. You can get it, it is out there, just go over to Discogs, but I mean, one and done albums, fantastic music. This whole album just slays. But anyway, give you a little bit more here, I'll turn it up. Yeah, Midnight, Into the Night. Hard to get. Well, like I said, you could probably find it. Up next, a band out of Switzerland, Swiss hard rock band. They do have quite a few albums out. Of course, we're all familiar with, if you follow this band. This band is called Toad. And Dreams is the album. Of course, if you're familiar with Toad, you're familiar with the green cover with the frog on there, that the Toad had. That is kind of hard to, if you don't see it right away, you don't know it's a Toad. But it has Toad in the eyeball, I believe. But this is a re-release from Karma Records. I do have quite a few albums from Karma. Great quality. But again, more progressive rock in nature. But they do have a few albums. Let's see, what were they? They formed in 1970, actually. Few lineup changes. Of course, if you're familiar with Toad, you're familiar with probably the guitarist, and he went on to do a solo career. I do have one of his albums I'm going to show you on this, which was Vic Vergat, and Down to the Bone, who was the guitarist. He passed away here in 2023, I believe, and they don't know the cause. So, but yeah, Toad is the focus on this, and I mean, if you're familiar with Brain Ticket, he was also on that, or Warner Froelich was. Martin Birch, if you don't, it was engineered, recorded by Martin Birch. Some of Vic's guitar playing is kind of, a lot of people would compare some of his stylings to Jimi Hendrix, you know, but anyway, Toad, they did Toad, which was the main album, which was their debut, which is probably their most defining album, which came out in 71, and then Toad Dreams came out in 75. I do have Tomorrow Blue as well. And but they continued putting albums out until about 2005. And I don't know, it does not really appear that they are doing any tours since Vic Vergott died. So hopefully what we have is great. Here's some more for you here. Toad. Has maybe a funk vibe at times too, but there you go. Some Toad from Switzerland. Hope you enjoyed that. Up next, last one. Oh, another one and done album. These guys kind of formed in, I believe it was Idaho. If I'm not mistaken. And this is a fantastic album. And the band is called Salem, Mass. Kind of has one of these names almost, or it's almost like a death metal band name, or you can't read it, but it's just, you know, it kind of reminds me of that in a way. But anyway, these guys, you know, ultimate U.S. hard rock, hard psychedelic, proto-prog burner from 71, satanic occult overtones, so long tracks, ripping guitars, and brutal Moog attacks. Newly remastered sound, original artwork, insert with liner notes and photos. Here is some Salem, Mass for you guys. But I know originals are hard to come by and also very pricey. I'm just glad that these labels, some of these labels are putting out these gems. You know, it's a shame that such great music back in those days, you know, were kind of, you know, hard to get at times, you know, imports, I understand, you know, I've lived in a couple of bigger cities where they did have nice gem import areas, but, you know, a lot of stuff just didn't make it over there into record stores, you know. Again, I've always said it depends on the area of the country you're in, and bands that are in that area predominantly sold music in their areas, you know, 4-state area, 5-state area. I know bands in Minnesota, North Dakota will put out albums, put them out in a 5-state area, you know, North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, probably up in Canada, Iowa, Wisconsin, possibly, you know. And that was it as far as distributing some of these bands' music, you know. So, again, thanks for the internet, Discogs, places like that, where we can go explore, find, and listen to a lot of this stuff. I'm a product of the 70s. I grew up in the 70s. 70s, to me, was the best decade growing up and listening to music. Because to me, the 60s kind of started it, but I think the 70s really defined it early, in the middle, and towards the late 70s, where it kind of got a harder edge going into the 80s, and it really kind of focused and took off from there. But yeah, these guys, you know, fantastic band. If you're familiar with Black Widow, that band, very similar. But the keyboards, you just don't hear this styling anymore of these keys, early 70s, you know. And this one came out in 71. It's kind of hypnotizing at times. I mean, it was last week I was just in one of those 70s moods, and I just played like, oh man, all 70s bands. And these were some of them that I wanted to showcase. So anyway, that is Salem, Mass with Witch Burning from 1971. The last one in episode number 3 of the Flashback 70s. So anyway, guys, if you got any comments, leave them below. And I'll be back again next week with episode number 4 of Flashback 70s. Take care, everybody, and we'll see you next time.